Stage 18. We may not have had a mountain finish, but we still upended the GC. We have 3 days to go, and we still have a GC race. Maybe. We'll talk about that. Reactions and results from Stage 18. Did Sepp make a tactical error on Stage 17? There's a little bit of reporting on that. We'll take a look at that. Ineos, did they salvage their tour? Are they looking to bulk up their climbers? We have a little bit of news on the change front there. Will the GC change for the time trial on Stage 20? We'll break down a little bit of those top 5 and see how they've done on time trials. Some things that make you the ride of the day. And what was Landa's real reason for attacking the last 2 days? We will talk about conspiracy theories. It's Thursday, September 17, 2020, and this is the Between Two Wheels podcast, episode 200. We're doing also a different thing here. Once again, we've had issues streaming out to YouTube live. They had a little issue with Flow Bikes doing a copyright strike on us. So we're doing to Facebook Live. We are also doing it to Twitter, and maybe we'll create just a Between Two Wheels live stream account for Facebook for YouTube and see what we can do about that. Let's talk about Stage 18. Stage 18, first of all, let's do a little recap of what it was looking for, and from Jonathan Scriven, and basically his description of it.
The Italian border on any of these climbs. Okay. If I have the map exactly correct.
You probably do. Stage 18.
Okay, 18, Meridel. So these are regions where I've spent a lot of time, and they are spectacular, as you can imagine. They are super steep, but more than anything else, and you can feel it even if you just visit. And I think the profile will bear this out. They are high. Mm-hmm. I don't know what you are showing there for Meridel as a height. I don't know if I wrote that down.
The height, it looks like here you're getting as the first climb, 1978. So just under 2,000 meters.
This is 2,000 meters. This is a big difference from a climb that's at like 1,000 meters. So you're getting into the real high altitude. And I think this is the most traditional of the Alp stages. 3 or 4 really big climbs, super high altitude, loads of opportunities for attacks. I mean, this is the stage where you're taking your break on the downhill and you're making sure you watch every uphill because there's going to be attacks. So
the interesting there. All right, that's a good description of what we had for the stage today. So look, did they take a break on the downhill and watch your attacks on the uphill? Kind of, because we had a crash, an important crash on the downhill. So we'll take a look at that. So early on in the stage, we'll just do a recap here and then some results in a quick episode today. 32-man break early on. They came through the sprint points. It was won by Bennett and then Matteo Trentin over Sagan. Sagan just doesn't look like he has that kick. Is he going to do world championships? That's coming up in about a week and a half. A lot of climbing. It's really like a today's type of stage for the worlds out there. So will Sagan be playing a part of that? Maybe not. Maybe Trentin will be having a better chance. However, up on the day, the break then kind of whittles its way down. You get Carapaz in there, third day in a row, or second day in a row at least, or maybe it is third day in a row. Kwiatkowski, Mark Hirschi, Pelo Bilbao, Carlos Verona was in there. Nicholas E. Day goes up the road, and at some point you're just seeing a competition with all these, and we talked about it. Let's go back to Cat 1, Cat 3, Cat 2, Cat 1, a Cat 1, and then an uncategorized climb near the finish. And that Cat 1, though, near the end there, it's got some gravel going over the top. And, it's a little significant on that as well. By the way, if we're live and you have any comments, you guys want to put comments in here, go ahead. We'll take any questions or concerns. We'll post them up on the screen and also address them as we come along. Anyway, Kwiatkowski is pulling along well. Carapaz keeps sprinting Mark Hirschi for the King of the Mountains. So we finally have moved off of Kosnefoy, and Pogacar got the King of the Mountains yesterday. And with that, we're also now seeing a little bit more of a hot up competition. And you're getting Carapaz trying to get, because he's been 3 days out in the breaks, and he and Hirschi has been off in the moves as well. So he's been accumulating points, and they're both going for him. Hirschi is accumulating points after points. He takes the Col d'Assas at about 90 kilometers in over Carapaz for the third straight time. And with that, as they're coming over the top, Carapaz decides he's just going to kind of drift off, and he does a little bit of a downhill attack. The downhill attack then puts Hirschi in a little bit of difficulty because he's like, well, Carapaz has Kwiatkowski there. Kwiatkowski's not going to do anything, and off goes Hershey. Now, we've seen Hershey. He's been getting a lot of accolades for his descending lately, and people are kind of getting all hot and bothered about how great he descends, which he does. But I think he puts the pedal down a little too hard, trying to bring Carapaz back, and he slides out on the left-hand corner, goes into the ditch. Kwiatkowski takes a look at him as he goes by, doesn't take another look, and keeps on going. Now you've got a dwindled front group, and in the end, you've got just Kwiatkowski and Carapaz putting the pedal down, never dropping each other, always working in tandem, getting rid of Bilbao, getting rid of Hershey, as I said, Nicolas Ide, Carlos Verona, all these guys cruising out the back of that group. About 80-some kilometers out to the finish, and those two were able to hold off. Now, they ended up taking the win. You got Kwiatkowski holding up. Was it a photo finish? It was very close finish. It probably did go down to the photo. They're coming across arm in arm, kind of Le Mans / back in 1986 on Alpe d'Huez. But maybe a little less contention. Look, if the management was going to say who was going to win, because you often have that with teams, they're like, hey, here's how you're going to do it. They'd probably grant it to Kwiatkowski. He's been with the team for years. Carapaz just came over from Movistar. Kwiatkowski's been killing himself in the Tour over and over and over for years to basically do what he can to help Froome, Bernal, Thomas. He's a world champion himself. He's also won at Milan-San Remo in a sprint. And so if those two were going to just fight it out, I think it wouldn't be a problem for Kwiatkowski to win it. So in the end, they give it to Kwiatkowski. Both guys were pretty excited. And we'll do a little finish line quotes here of what Kwiatkowski had to say. However, back in the peloton, was this going to be a day decided by a GC? And were the GC guys going to actually take a shot at it? And were they going to make some efforts? And, look, you see that there's no mountaintop finish. So, it's kind of a question, is this going to happen? Well, I don't know if you're going to see Pogacar take an attack at Roglic. It's kind of, are you going to dispel those two? Those two are showing they're pretty solid. Obviously, Lopez yesterday. But there was coming into it, the GC field from 6, 7, 8 down. You saw Landa yesterday really putting his team on the front, causing a lot of havoc, trying to move up. He moves up a spot because of Iran. So that was helpful for him yesterday. But what was going to happen today? Well, they come into the Big Cat 1, 143 kilometer peak there, but it starts around the 138 kilometers or so into the 175 kilometer stage. So a good distance out. And at the bottom of that climb, you see Mikel Landa taking off with a teammate. And I'm not sure which one was it. Was it Caruso? I think Caruso and Bilbao were still up the road. So he had a teammate with him that was leading him up the road. And the next thing you know, he's dispatched him and he's got a decent lead. Now, did the teams react from behind? Not necessarily. Jumbo Visma, they had their guys in the front. George Bennett was working there. Wout Poels. You still had Tom Dumoulin, Sepp Kuss with Roglic. Everything looked fine. Port was in there. Lopez. You had Guillaume Martin was getting spit out the back. And soon you had Valverde, you had Yates, and you had Iran all getting distanced and getting put out the back. Interesting, because a little bit of an effect probably from the last few days, the work that, just the mountains in general, and then the work that Landa's team did. Over the top of the climb, you have a really just small group of people, of riders now. You've got, and they end up catching Landa, but with them, you've got Landa, Lopez, Port, Sepp Kuss, Roglic, Pogacar, and that was about it for the main group. Back, you've been really distanced the other ones. They weren't even close to this time, trying to catch back on. Now there's a section of gravel. And with this section of gravel, all of a sudden Port is got a flat and he's coming off the main group. And you've got to say that Port, I think, really reacted. He didn't have a teammate. Alessandro had already been kicked out. The only one with a teammate there was Roglic, who had Sepp Kuss. So that's obviously an important part. And you sometimes go, look, you can make it through these tours without a teammate. Pogacar has kind of ridden okay without him, especially in the high support in the mountains. But this is the times when you're really necessary to have him. Port doesn't have a team. The support car is not there. There's not some guys on the side of the road, kind of the Paris-Roubaix thing, hanging wheels out to help him out. And he's riding totally on his rim. You can tell he's having a hard time getting around the corners, but he didn't panic. And what he did do was he just kept riding, and finally he gets a bike change. He probably loses a minute or so. And so then you have Enric Mas. He's the other one up there for Movistar. So you have Movistar with Enric Mas, who had been with DuCorny Quick-Step last year, and Landa, who had been with Movistar last year. You'd think that maybe they'd be able to, they want to distance Port. He's the guy that they need to get rid of because he can probably time trial better than them. But they're not coordinating really well. And Roglic, Sepp, they're pushing the pace down the hill. But as it kind of comes to the flat and before you get the last kicker up to Cat 3, well, actually it's uncategorized, but it was almost 5 some kilometers at 4.5%, 5%, going in with about 10K to go. They crest the summit of that one. But coming into that, there was a little descent down in some flat areas. You saw Roglic and Sepp kind of moving off the front. What happened behind was you had Wout Poels and Tom Dumoulin catching the Richie Porte group. They actually give him some help. They've decided it's more important for us to be up front with Roglic. There's 2 guys up the road, but there's time bonuses, and we don't want him to be in any trouble if this Cat 3 has problems. And Sepp is up there, but if we can get up there, it's much more important that we, being Wout van Aert and Tom Dumoulin, are at least in contact and helping the team out and Roglic out than it is to keep distancing Port. Port's doing a lot of work on the back though. And as they're coming up on the Cat 3, I keep saying Cat 3, it looks like it should be a Cat 3. It's uncategorized, about 10K to go. He connects on the climb and coming over the top, and Port then connects with them. So Enric Mas, Landa, they didn't do, and Landa then had Bilbao, I think, was in there. Maybe it was 3 riders for Bahrain at that point. You think that they had put the hammer down. But I think in his sense, look, first of all, Enric Mas rides for Movistar. He's got team tactics that are wacky because of that. But Landa has in his DNA, just mixed in there, not knowing how to ride with a team, I think. Although you must say his team has done pretty good. My point is, you think you could have really hit the front, been cohesive for those guys, and distanced Port a little bit. Port did a great move, caught it back on. He ends up staying with the group till the end. In the end, you have 1-2, Kwiatkowski, and then Carapaz. And then you have Wout van Aert comes through because there's still time bonus left for the finish. He ends up taking the sprint for 3rd, and Roglic actually outsprints Pogacar for the 4th place and kind of saving. And I guess there was probably no more time bonuses there, but Dumoulin was in there. Sepp was in there. It was a good finish for the Jumbo-Visma team. Kwiatkowski at the finish, he said, "Look, I can't describe how grateful to the whole team and Richard Carapaz it is. I got some nice moments in cycling, but this was a new experience and had goosebumps the last several kilometers. We really enjoyed the last few K. Unbelievable." They said, "What is this, a message to Bernal at all? Do you have anything?" He says, "Yeah, I hope he'll be all right. He was sad to leave the race and wished us good luck. We've tried over the last 3 days in the breakaway, and today we found the best legs ever." Yeah, it was pretty interesting because those 2 guys just kept the hammer down. Worried about Hershey? Yeah, he was fighting for the mountains classification. So when he took that risk, took that corner way too fast. When I saw him, I went on my brakes. And in that moment, it's better to go 99% and stay safe. He wasn't keen to work before, so we didn't look behind when we went past him. Yeah, kind of interesting on that one. How about the GC change? Let's take a look at the overall standings here and the results for today. Kwiatkowski gets the win. Carapaz in second. Wout, minute 51. So they closed that down pretty good. It was 4 or 5 minutes at one point. And obviously the 2 guys, Kwiatkowski and Richard Carapaz, the last 2K, they kind of just mailed it in and enjoyed it. There was an interesting part. There was a fan that ran out on the road about the last 200 meters. He was masked, but he was running out there almost like he was going to, I don't know if he's, what is Kwiatkowski? Is he Czech? Let's see what nationality is. But he's running out on the road there. And he is from Poland, of course. He is from Poland. So I don't know if it was a Polish fan that was running out there trying to congratulate him, but it looked like an official jumped the barriers himself and maybe tackled him. It used to be the good old days, baseball. You'd see these guys running on the field and keep the cameras on them, watch them get pummeled by one of the outfielders, or on the football, the football field, you see someone get tackled. Here, we didn't really get to see that. And it would have been nice to see some asphalt. That guy eats some asphalt. Kwiatkowski, Richard Carapaz, Wout van Aert comes in second, 151. Primoz, he got the time bonus there. Primoz Roglic, 153. Pogacar, same. They get a second gap to Richie Porte. Interesting. They gave a 1 second gap to Richie Porte on 6th place through Enric Mas down to Lopez, Dumoulin, Sepp, Damiano Caruso, Mikel Landa, and so on. Mark Hirsch comes 204. Philip Babao 14th. Geschke, these are all the guys in the break. The top one there, Martin Guillaume, 430. Rigoberto Urán, Valverde, Leon Sanchez, Barguil, and 25th. Okay, so the GC doesn't really shake out much except for Roglic. Actually, he doesn't get any time there because he and Pogacar, they're still 57. Lopez, I think they got a second or two because of what we just saw with the gap to the Port group. So they got an extra second there. Richie Port, 306, unchanged. Mikel Landa moves up 2 places due to Yates and Rigoberto Urán. They both moved down, and Enric Mas. So those two both catapult themselves up. Landa at 328, Mas at 419. We'll take a look at those guys and how they time trial, if there's any possibility for them to be moving up on stage 20. So let's take a look at that. First of all, we know how Roglic can time trial. He's done well in Worlds at Bergen in Norway. Was he second there to Tom Dumoulin? I think it was. He also second in the Slovenian time trial championships to Pogacar. He won the Giro first stage last year. He does just fine in the time trials. It's just he's been able to do that. It's not a big deal. Pogacar, we think we know how he does as well. I mean, he won the Slovenian time trial championship, so he obviously going. It's not like you're winning it in some country where you don't have competition. You had Roglic, and Roglic is flying right now, so we know how he does as well. Richie Port is pretty much has a career of, we can look back and see how he does in time trials. Tour de France, he does just fine. Now, with all this said, we can go to the actual stage profile, get a nice understanding of what actually we're looking at here. So for the first 14K, it's flat. They have a time check there. Then it starts to bump up a little bit up to the next 10K. But they go from 340 meters up to 609. So it's a little bit of a climb as they're starting that there, a little dip down. But then the last 6K, I would even give it a little bit more than that, back to 27. They go from 488 meters up to 12, almost 1100 or so. So obviously it's a little bit different than just a standard time trial because you're going to have some climbing involved, and the climbers are going to take this. But it's the last third of the stage, which is obviously a portion you can. And we talked about that yesterday, kind of with the bumps, the ups and downs, the wiggles in the final part of the road. The strong guys are going to be able to really push on the down and not just use that as rest. And obviously the fast time trial guys, you have the kinds like Roglic, one of the best climbers in this race, one of the best time trialers in this race. What are you going to have? Port can do that as well. Port can put up a time and be solid with that as well. How about Urán and Yates? Well, they're really no longer in the issue, and they weren't the greatest time trialers in general. Urán could throw out an amazing time. Once again, we'll go back to the GC here. Urán, though, is 6:05 back, so he's got 10 seconds to Yates. He can probably take that going up to 7th place. Can he reach a whole 2 minutes though to get to Enric Mas or someone in that range? Probably not. So you're probably not going to see that. Now, Landa, you might be able to see him drop back. What's been Landa's record on races on time trials? Well, he's had a 2nd place in the Spanish National Time Trial Championships in 2016, mostly, although a lot of top 20s. Now it has this climbing, and he's obviously coming on, so you could see him, coming good for a time trial. But for the most part, you're not going to see him. You're not going to see him leapfrog over Port. I would doubt. Port's been climbing really well, and he's and showing that today that he can push it on the flat. So is he going to be able to get there? That we don't know. How about Lopez? He's not won a time trial. He's got several seconds, some fourths, and top 10s. It's kind of a mixed bag for him. Enric Mas, he kind of also is unknown. And by the way, this is Lopez's first Tour de France. So Mas, though, in 2016, he was 3rd in Route du Savoy, Mont Blanc. I don't know if that was an uphill time trial. And then he had a 5th. Otherwise, he was 9th last year on stage, 13th time trial. So perhaps he can do something. But once again, we'll look at the spread here. You're not going to catch it. The only one that's going to, unless you have a mechanical of some sort, the only one that could possibly catch Roglic would be Pogacar. Lopez, he might be able to overtake Tadej, but that's questionable. Can Port get himself up into 3rd place? He's got to put, a minute and a half on Lopez. That's a tough haul. You may see your final GC placings here for the rest of the Tour de France. Okay. Yesterday we talked about Sepp Kuss. I thought it was great. Bike selections. I do appreciate you asking that, Eric Houston. I'd love to see the TT bikes. Okay, let's go back there because that's a really good question, and appreciate you bringing that up. Bike selections. So you've got 14K here before it starts to pitch, and up to the 609, and then down, and then your last section. Now the Planche de Belfi, I don't think they take into the consideration the gravel section that they did last year. I'm not sure. I'll have to look closer at that, but I don't believe that's the case. If they were, well, first of all, would they be doing this climb, this last 6K on a TT bike? I don't think so. So can they make the swap, and can this first section be enough to really influence them? Paul Mitchell says bike swap TT like the World's 2017. Excellent point. That's a good one. Way to bring it back to Bergen in Norway there. Yeah, Dumoulin and those guys. Some of them I don't believe did the bike swap. I'm trying to remember. Some guys did, some guys did not, and we'll have to look back. Maybe you can check that out right now. Some of those guys did not do the bike swap. That was a pretty steep climb going up into how are the KOM points distributed in the TT? Great question coming in from Chris Flower as well. So first of all, Chris, what do you think about the bike swap, and is that going to happen? Bergen, think back then, and it seems like to me, Dumoulin did not do a bike swap. And I'm trying to remember the guys that did the best. Bergen, which was Dumoulin, and then Roglic, I don't think he did as well. There is KOM points. So Chris says, I don't see him here on the profile. KOM points for the final time trial. How is that going to be distributed? Well, I think like always, the first three across the line. So the guys that are going very last, they're going to get the KOM points. Actually, I don't know. Maybe they'll do a time. This would be, yes, it will happen. He thinks it'll be a bike swap. Okay. Paul Mitchell says Dumoulin didn't. Okay. I'll take your word for it. I imagine you can do the research on there. Dumoulin didn't. Chris says, yes, it will happen on the bike swaps. It'll be interesting to see in the breakdown. The KOM points, it will be interesting to see also on those, how that's going to take place, because as Chris mentioned, there's going to be KOM. Well, if you're going to distribute KOMs on a time trial, and if you're going to do just from the last time check, which at 30 to 36, and you're just going to give it for that, then maybe, and if it's on just time from there, maybe that's how we should be doing the KOM points in general. What do you guys think? Eric Houston asks, do you swap at the crest of the first rise? I think you swap right as you're starting to come in. That's a good point too, because you probably want to be able to take some you don't want to lose momentum. So I think typically they're doing it, yes, after the first rise, probably at the 24K, go downhill, or maybe in that flat section as it starts to rise up there, you're going to swap. Paul Mitchell says, Tom Dumoulin, I didn't want to take the risk of a bike change. Yeah, and that's a good point. He didn't want to take the risk. So Dumoulin didn't swap, as I was saying. So yes, he rode the TT bike the whole way. I believe that's what we had said. Or at the base of the last climb. Well, we'll see. This will all be things we'll figure out. Let's go back to Sepp Kuss, and then we'll deal with some of the, if you guys still have some more questions. Sepp Kuss. So the question was, did he have a tactical incident last stage on stage 17, and by kind of drifting off the front? Well, Villeneuve reported, and then it was talked about where he had been told to kind of go off the front, and I think, and then he said, "Oh, I didn't have it to stay with Lopez." I almost wonder if that's the truth. He got probably told to come back. He comes back. He loses a minute to Lopez in the end, and he's not trying to ride hard. Stays ahead of Richie Porte. You kind of wonder if he'd been able to dig deep, what he might have been able to do. But once again, I talked about I thought was great riding at that moment, coming back to Roglic, doing a move to get him separated from Pogačar. And in the end, that, blowing using his bullets at that point, instead of using them on trying to stay with Lopez, was probably the best deal. Also, the report said that, and I'll get back to your questions here. The report also said that when they were deciding the tour team back in December, Roglic insisted on Sepp Kuss being named to it. That's huge. And that took him going with Sepp Kuss in the Giro, which did not work out very well for either one of those. I mean, it worked out fine for Roglic, but it wasn't great. And then seeing him in the Vuelta and how much support Sepp Kuss gave to him in the Vuelta. So that's a big bonus. Paul Mitchell writes, cycling tips. is a quote, among the pre-race favorites, in addition to Dumoulin and Froome, riders like Rohan Dennis, Tony Martin, Johan Castrovejo all opted against a bike swap. All right. So that might pretend to what he has. Maybe we need to do a comparison of the climb here with the Bergen one in Norway and see how that works. Chris Flowers says, agreed. KOM points need revising. Leverage a Strava partnership and pull times from there. KOM jersey presented by Strava. I don't know. I have a new shirt that came in the mail, and it's the KOM, so I'll wear that in a day or so here. Eric Houston says, big guys, big power. Well, I hope you're talking about me. Ineos, stages 1 and 2 and stage 18. Did they salvage their Tour de France by what they did? Well, Carapaz has really been on the hunt the last 3 days, and he's shown that he wasn't set to do the Tour initially. He came in. He was looking, I think, to rebound and go back to the Giro. That's not the case. Obviously, it's a little later, and he is flying right now and going well, probably due to the preparation for a later race of the Giro. Probably not going to happen for him for the Giro this year, but he does get to be king of the mountains. I think we're going to have, let's go look at that. Let's finish off the GC, the points, and all those for today. Points, Sam Bennett got a little extra on Sagan. Matteo Trentin up within 11 points. Brian Cockard was able to finish yesterday, the youth jersey. We have Pogacar over Enric Mas, still 322. And a new leader on the KOM, Richard Carapaz over Tadej and Roglic, Mark Hirsch, Lopez, Concefoy down to 6th place. So 2 points separate those two. Could be interesting going back to our whole issue of the time trial and how that gets dispersed. Smaller, Eric Houston, smaller guys that weigh different, maybe a larger impact. Well, I think you're going to see the first of all, and then he says, of course, maybe TD bike swaps affect the lighter rider more. So here's what I actually think about the bike swap. It's all about momentum. Don't want to risk it, making that change. Can you get up the climb in enough? And the bikes are pretty much light enough anyway, but is it going to cause you enough trouble? Is it the kind of climb that has too much momentum change up and down that's not going to cause that? 3 weeks of racing, you have different types of rides. Some have been sitting in the whole time, and they might be able to be a little more fresher. So it really comes down to, you typically see the GC guys are the ones that are doing the best, and unless you have a flat time trial. Chris says Ineos was riding a 110 Grand Tour stage, wind, dry spell. Needed to come up with something. Yeah, so let's finish off on that. They needed to come up with something. They did get that. They got a wonderful picture and moment there with Carapaz and Kwiatkowski coming over the line together. You got to share that. The guys, both of them rode amazing. Kwiatkowski deserved that. It was his first Tour de France stage win. It would have been Carapaz's first as well. They've been in the hunt for the last 3 days. This is not a normal race for Ineos and Team Sky. They have not had this kind of experience in the Tour. Now they've definitely come against this with Grant Thomas, Richie Porte trying to lead, the Vuelta or the Giro and failing miserably, and then trying to have plan A, B, C, D, and E did not work out. I also saw today that looking for more climbers. EF Pro Cycling, they're in the middle of building their roster next year, while Ineos Grenadiers, have already made several high-profile signings ahead of the new season. Adam Yates has already announced that Ineos rider 2-year deal. Richie Porte is also set to join from Trek Segafredo. Laurens de Plus will be on the move from Jumbo-Visma, although like Porte, has yet to be announced. And now they are in talks with Danny Martinez, stage winner for EF. Yeesh, didn't want to lose him. Look, some of those teams have a little bit harder time being able to hold riders. Is Jumbo-Visma, their budget is not, there's just kind of mid-level budget. You've got Sepp Kuss, you've got George Bennett, you got Wout, you have Roglic, Kruijswijk, Dumoulin. Some of these guys are going to, I think Sepp's contract's coming up here. Wout, I mean, you've got to be paying these guys. Sepp is going to be deserved of some money. And if he decides to go somewhere else, maybe he takes the money. I would prefer, it would be good to see him staying with a team like this. You just keep learning and getting your chances, kind of doing what you're doing. A high profile in a sense too. But that team's going to have to come up with some money, much like EF. Whereas Ineos, they just throw the cash out there and they keep buying it all New York Yankee style. Okay. Landa takes his revenge. What was the point of Bahrain Merida riding on the front? Was it so that we can get Landa up to 5th place at 328 out? maybe getting him onto third place. He is a pretty good podium finisher. He also likes to just crest it right into the fourth place on a few Grand Tours. Well, 2 reasons they were riding in the front. And let's see which one you like. I'm going to throw a conspiracy theory one out here. And it's not the flat earth one that Sagan was talking about. Evidently, he said, as according to Curt, he said something about the world is flat, so I should be able to do good. Maybe Chris can update me on that one. But do you remember 2019 Ineos, well, Movistar, I should say, team Movistar, they go into the race, the Giro, with Mikel Landa as their prime guy. Carapaz had come on. He was kind of an unknown as far as what he can do. Although he had finished, I want to say, third the year before when Froome won, he had gone up quite a bit when some of those other guys had exploded. There was a good battle between Carapaz and Lopez for the third place finish in the Giro in 2018. 2019 comes. It's all set for Landa. If you watch the Movistar production of this, you get a good viewing and understanding of kind of the angst between these two. It all goes sideways for Landa to begin with, as they do the initial time trial. He loses 20 seconds to Carapaz. Stage 3, Landa gets back another 46, and this happens all the way through it. 46 seconds back on Carapaz, leaps him on GC. The next day, stage 4, Carapaz wins, gains 44 seconds, and now Landa's down by 28. And if you watch the Netflix, you can see that he's stressed about this during this time too. It all stayed the same. Then they had a time trial on stage 9. Landa lost over a minute to Carapaz. Stage 12, Landa took back 30 seconds. Stage 13, and he takes back another 18. 14, Carapaz wins second stage and gets 154 in Landa. He gets another 36 on stage 15. Landa then gets 12 seconds on stage 17, another 4 seconds on 20, and another 15 on stage 21, final time trial. Carapaz wins. Landa comes in fourth, as we said, because he likes to do. And the next flick shows that Landa was really distraught with this, and he was kind of a mess. I mean, he's very fragile. Both of these guys seem to be that way. In the end, Landa then goes to Movistar, goes and does, I think it's the Vuelta, the Tour. I'm not sure. I think maybe it was the Tour he did. Had all kinds of issues. That whole season was fraught with them. Carapaz ends up getting in a wreck in a race that he wasn't supposed to do, the team said. They just lit him on fire on the Netflix show, and he goes to Ineos. Evidently, he was even riding in the Ineos. Hey, so my point is, maybe Landa and the Bahrain team were chasing Carapaz. That was specifically, they didn't want him to get a win. Is that one? Now, the real reason, probably Rod Ellingsworth used to be with Ineos. Now he's with Bahrain. He's picked up a bunch of good, riders, and he's got a different mindset. And what they did yesterday kind of set Landa to be able to go from 7th, 8th, wherever he was yesterday, up to 5th, because the driving the pace so hard yesterday was pretty detrimental to Iran and Yates today. And it was almost detrimental to Port as well. Brian Zimney says, who is Curt? I agree. Chris says, I can't clarify Curt's comments. Okay, maybe I'll just read them from my text messages here, because I think it's important. That's why people fall in love with Sagan when he says, I believe world is flat, so the finish suit to me. Okay, did I do that justice? So anyway, I think Bahrain, look, they're pretty good to see. And I mentioned this yesterday. You start to see yesterday when they're on the front, and you're kind of questioning why they're doing what they're doing. It looks a little, Landa, he's not going to be able to outkick these guys. But once again, we saw a team, and this is kind of the important part. We saw a team attempt, because you've seen this before. Other Ineos or Sky is on the front, and so another team's going to assert their part, and they can't do it. And in the end, they just blow their whole team out. What Bahrain actually did was they did isolate Roglic in the end. Well, they also isolated Landa, but when they were done, so was Jumbo Visma, save for Sepp. So in a sense, it kind of worked. And then today they ended up doing the same thing. So good for them. I like to see a little bit more parity in the field to have, and as we see, 57 seconds to second place, 127th, third. It's not a bad one so far. In the things that make you go category, Andre Greipel abandons the race. I didn't even know he was in the race. Stage 17, we got outside the time limit. Brian Cockard was very close to missing that. I saw the broom wagon coming over the finish, and it looked like it could have been him, but it wasn't. It was his teammate. Kevin Reza had finished a little bit in front, but Debuscher, his teammate Jens Debuscher, did not make the required time limit. Carcard said to the reporters after the stage that Debusschere waited for him on the 17-kilometer climb to the Col de Madeleine and then helped him through the entire valley, steep slopes of the final climb. When the Belgian made it to the vicious final ascent of the Col de l'Oise, he had nothing left and finished the stage with the Broomwagen. It is a pity that I have to leave so close to Paris, an emotional Debusschere said, according to Sporza, but it is no different. I came to the team to ride for Brian, and then you do what you have to do, everything. On the Madeleine, I was pretty quiet in the group with Sam Bennett, but Brian had a hard time and I waited for him. We can't do much here without him because that's a lead out without a sprinter. What's a lead out without a sprinter? In the valley, I did everything I could to bring him closer, but at the foot of the final climb, that was the end for me. Then he left with my approval. It was over. In his exhaustion on conclusion of stage 17, Carcard posted on his Twitter feed, at the end of the effort, only one word, thank you. That's kind of cool. I mean, that's your total dedication of a rider. Who obviously he was with the Bennett group. The Bennett group made the time limit by 7 minutes. So he did everything he could to get Carcard there. So now Carcard has a chance. Let's take a look at the upcoming stages. Tomorrow, Champonnay, I can't pronounce that. It looks like it's climby, but you're probably going to be able to have it. It's all 100,000 meters. You're probably going to have some sprinters wanting to get another chance, some like Carcard, Bennett. You still have Caleb Ewan in there. Maybe this is a Sagan day, stage 19, Friday, have that chance. And then obviously coming into Paris, the very last and final day. So those are the ones we have. Like I said, tomorrow, just a Cat 3, a sprint. So you're going to see those guys going for it. KOM points on offer for stage 20. That's according to Chris Flower. And I have not been able to determine that. You know, there's an interesting thing Chris also brought up earlier this week, which was which jerseys take precedent over the other. So Pogacar has the white jersey, and he also has the polka dot jersey. Which one do you wear? Well, they actually said you wear the polka dot, takes precedent over the yellow the white jersey, and that obviously the yellow jersey takes precedent. What was interesting that Curt found out was that there was also a note there that said your home national jersey or world championship jersey could take precedent over any jersey in the race if that federation requires it to. I don't know about the UCI requiring the World Championships jersey because I haven't seen that being done when someone's in yellow or the other jerseys. But evidently, if you're from a country that requires you to wear your national championship jersey, doesn't matter. If you're in the yellow, you're wearing your national championship jersey. That's the way it goes. How about the ride of the week? Well, ride of the day. Kind of have to give it to Kwiatkowski and Carapaz for their efforts out front and being able to finally get something for Ineos. You know, look, Ineos is kind of the team that when they really need to, they can at least do what they have to. And they did what they had to do. I also kind of want to give it to Port. He had a real steady hand being able to reattach himself to that group after his flat on the gravel. A little Garode action there. Let's go back to a question here. Paul Mitchell, thanks for all the input to you guys. The TT finishes with 5.9 kilometers and averages 8.5%. The Bergen TT, Mount Florin, was 3.4K between 9 to 10. A little bit at 5.5 at the end. So Bergen was a little bit more severe, but a lot shorter. Yeah. I don't know what the actual pitches are on the final time trial here, but good analysis. So what's your conclusion? That if they didn't do a bike change at Bergen, then they're probably not going to do a bike change here. So Eric Houston, you're going to get your wish to see some TT bikes, I imagine, in the mix. You're going to get you're probably going to see some of those guys throwing their early teammates out in the mix to kind of give a little test. And, you know, they'll have time to test this out in the day as well. So that will be anyway. Anyway, back to my ride of the week. I want to give further accolades to Landa and his team, but Port was really impressive to me today to be able to stay with the group, catch back on, getting this flat. Could have been his one giant moment. So far, look, we're 18 stages down. We got 19, 20, 21. So far, being Port, has been able to overcome some of these issues and not cause that. His biggest problem has really been, did he lose time in the wind? I don't remember. Maybe he did lose time in the wind that day, but just losing time on the climbs and actually somewhat minimal. Brian Zimney chimes in with nothing, just Brian Zimney. I appreciate that, guys. Another one in the books. This was episode 200. I appreciate you guys joining me for 200 episodes. You know, the numbers may be off a little bit, but from what I could gather, I think that's exactly where we are at. So appreciate it. Check out the show. We put it out on Twitter, put it out on Facebook, and I'll upload it to YouTube coming up pretty soon. And also keep attached here because we may do a YouTube live actual channel. That's what I'm looking at. Thanks, everybody. Take care.